Welcome back to The Forecast, brought to you by Headstorm, the show that teaches you how to engineer growth by learning from industry luminaries to provide you with tactical steps you can use tomorrow. I'm John Humphrey, a guest host of Headstorm Forecast. I've spent my entire career helping services companies grow revenue. Our methodology and software helps founders and their business developers to grow sales. Check us out at connectforlife.com to see how our tools can help you grow your revenue. In today's forecast, one of Headstorm's senior partners, Rob Kelley, is joined by Joe Santaularia. Joe is a senior vice president and managing partner of the Industrial Tenant Representation Division at Bradford Commercial Real Estate Services. He is at the forefront of paradigm-shifting change aimed at some of today's most challenging issues. Today, he is talking about his perspective on warehousing trends. He is also going to give us an inside look at the local DFW market and what he's seeing around the metroplex. Joe, it's an honor. Let's get started.
Just a current event, just to kind of shine a light on that as an example. I did read in the news that Kroger, the grocery store chain, had just opened a new, I guess, a distribution center in South Dallas. Yeah. The interesting thing, I guess, from my perspective, is that it's like fully robotic.
Right.
So there's a lot in the way of technology innovation that's taking place there. I don't know if you're seeing other examples of that.
It's the robotics trend is following the labor trend, where it's a little bit of a trailing indicator. Where when labor costs start to spike, companies start looking for other alternatives. And robotics is certainly a way for a company to get leaner instead of having an employee. Actually, I met with another strategic partner. He was a packaging company, and he needed to get all his Christmas orders in before November. And his solution was a bunch of employees with hair dryers because he couldn't get enough machines to do this. But again, that was more of a comical answer to it. But realistically, a machine can do a lot of things better than a human being can do it. Human beings are built for error. So robotics takes that out, and it enables a warehouser to instead of having to instead of needing 1 million square feet, maybe they need 600,000, and instead of paying, you roll that over 400,000 square feet, then you throw that money into a revenue silo or another initiative, and you're able to build your company a little faster. So we're certainly seeing a lot of companies consider other alternatives with the labor crunch. The labor crunch is definitely one of the biggest problems we're seeing, and some other ones that we're seeing are lead times and procurement, but they all kind of play into each other.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the robotics and inside the warehouse. I know one thing that we're seeing with Headstorm is robotics are fundamentally being created by what are called IoT, Internet of Things, which are devices that connect them to networks, and as a result allows them to generate data on what's going on. So I would imagine that part of the space that's being used is to allow these robotics processes to be set up and to use the space so that these devices have access to the inventory and whatnot.
It's robotics. What they're taking advantage of is cubic. You got the labor equation, part of the equation where they're taking out employees, so that saves you on overhead. But also, you're able to take advantage of the cubic of a warehouse where. When buildings were built in the 50s, and you see that in Brook Hollow, right west of 35, clear heights are 12 feet. And then they went to 16, then they went to 18. Now they're pushing 40. So the cubic argument has always been up, but what robotics is tackling is in between the aisles, kind of like when you go to a Lowe's or a Home Depot and you walk down those aisles. They're usually 6 feet wide, and it's similar in a distribution warehouse. But in a warehouse with robotics, these aisles are 6 inches, where you have a robotic running up and down, picking and packing, and it is flying. So you're able to have more racks, therefore more cubic, as in you get to, it depends on the size, obviously, but you can fit X percent more racks in your warehouse due to the aisles being much smaller. And that's why we're seeing robotics come along, because it enables these warehousers to become more efficient. And I mentioned just in time a little earlier where it's not dead, but it's broken, you have a lot of consumer product good companies who are onshoring a lot of product right now. And these robotics are helping them have a lot more product in their warehouse, where instead of having a guy look at a computer, then drive a forklift over here, grab this product, it's enabling these companies to be far more efficient and getting product in and out much quicker.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Robotics are making their appearance more and more in the supply chain. Warehouse and distribution centers are automating tasks thanks to their help. They're even able to reduce the space needed between aisles. So not only are they helping with task efficiency, but they are also helping to maximize output per square foot. The labor shortage has made fulfillment more difficult, but robotics is helping to close that gap.
Because these robotic systems and other systems are generating so much data, that it allows machine learning to take place, where you aggregate that data and then you're able to understand what's working, what's not working, and as a result then you're able to quickly make changes to how the robots are performing, the digital twins, all of those scenarios. I did see an interesting statistic that approximately 30% year-over-year growth for companies that are data-driven organizations.
Right.
So if you've now plugged into these types of data scenarios and you're aggregating that much data, you're growing by 30% year over year.
Right.
That is fascinating. And the neat thing is with the types of solutions that we are able to develop, which would include machine learning, also artificial intelligence, and then data science. You can create these data models based on what's happening, be able to learn from it, and then make changes to the robotic systems, or use that for those external communications to other partners in the supply chain.
Are these data models, are they better for manufacturers or better for logistic companies, or both? Are you able to kind of go down those rabbit holes and talk about, I guess, how does the data help a manufacturer, and how does the data help a logistics company would be my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, on each side of it, you're helping your partners, again, because you're understanding the inflow of that merchandise, if a load is going to make it on time or if it's behind or whatnot. And then on the outbound side, kind of the same thing. Do we have the finished goods ready to go out?
Okay.
And are the pickup times that we had already scheduled, are we holding to that, or are we behind, or are we ahead? So that's kind of the external side. Then internal, kind of within the building itself, are the improvements that can be made by understanding those dependencies. So they said they're going to be 2 days late, not a problem. We won't have our staff come in, or our robotic systems will be focused on other loads, pulling other stuff in, or picking and packing for another shipment as opposed to this one. Because it's going to be 2 days later on that one. Does that make sense?
So maybe this shipment belongs on this truck rather than that truck to make it on time, or it's going to be late anyway, so we might as well send it with that one.
With someone else. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then, as I'm sure you're aware, from a warehousing perspective, those finished goods typically are being put in another place along the slips or other areas, and so those have to be accounted for,
Right.
Kind of swept aside or cleared out for a new pick and pull to
Right.
come in.
Because there's a few different types of warehouses that we run into. One being cross-dock, where you have the delivery side and then you have the export side.
Right.
And then, but then you have your warehouses, which I touched on, the CPG industry, where they have these really deep warehouses, and they're all about, and then this is where the robotics might kick in, where they're just trying to store enough goods just in case there's another robotics, or it's not a robotics, there's another market correction where everyone's out of toilet paper or whatever.
It's the safety stock.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And certainly from COVID, that has changed tremendously, where the safety stocks have essentially gone up. And I wonder if that's what's driving the larger leases for you.
It is. I've heard that again, these CPG companies, it's 5x of what it used to be.
Wow.
Where instead of 200,000 square feet, they're at 1 million. Where it's just you can no longer depend on your international strategic partners to get you your stuff in time, because there are just so many bottlenecks that were created from that shutdown that happened in April of 2020. We were at the same luncheon with the CEO at Crane Worldwide Logistics, and he mentioned that it's going to take a couple years for this stuff to work its way through. Where
That's right.
we're not done yet. It's there's still not really bleeding, but it's just this stuff just needs to work its way through the system.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it does also create a higher level of sophistication for the companies,
Yep.
because a moment ago I was talking about kind of the external drivers of data and then the internal. On the internal side, though, there's also the connectivity to other warehouses.
Right.
So now you have to understand, when we talk about safety stock, that safety stock has to be calculated across all the warehouses that they're now standing up.
Okay.
So whereas in the past, maybe like a retail store, they were more focused on their stock there, right?
Right.
And if we're out, we'll make an order. If not, not a big deal. Nowadays, it's more of a consolidated view of where will fulfillment take place.
Right.
So if I don't have it in my Dallas warehouse, maybe I have it in my Denver warehouse or Oklahoma City or whatever the case may
Right.
be. So from our perspective, that means that there's now a consolidation or an aggregation of data that gets rolled up
Right.
at an enterprise level. And so I know we're doing solutions in things like master data management that's really big right now. The cool thing is, the cloud service providers like the AWSs and the Azures, they have massive amounts of data storage available, so we can quickly build these systems and aggregate the data using those platforms in a way that's really, really cost effective to our customers.
And to talk on a networking point, I had and piggyback off of what you just said, I had a strategic partner, and he works for a very large box company, they make boxes and for Amazon and pet food companies. They are busting at the seams at their they have 120 warehouses nationwide, but they're busting at the seams in Dallas. But their McAllen facility,
Yeah.
they're bone dry. So that's probably where, and maybe there's an introduction here I can make for you, but it's data like that would probably be able to relieve a problem like that, where it's like, why is this stuff here when you can just have it here, and instead of you can now sell more clients in the DFW market, and you're not choking in McAllen. So I think that data issue is relevant, and there are definitely some big users out there that could certainly use it.
Yeah, agreed.
For the next segment in the forecast, more technology means more data. So what should you be doing with it? The more information your company has to work with, the better, right? For a warehouse, that's a definite yes. Whether it's coming from robotics, sensors, or other IoT devices, more information means better data-driven decisions. Ones that actually take into account as much information as possible without relying on a gut feeling. But you have to get to that point. You have to have the right information in the right place. If the information isn't all in one place, then you're not taking it all into account when making decisions. Next up on the forecast, how is fulfillment changing?
We're talking about inventory data, but there's also just contact data, location data, aggregating all of those things, because if you're making a last minute decision for a truck to go to a McAllen facility instead of a Dallas facility, that has to then catch up with where's that party information, the billing information, all of those things now have to kind of follow that shipment. So
exactly,
it raises the level of complexity.
The boxes or the shipment's almost living.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's its own entity now. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so what does the future hold in warehousing? What are you seeing going forward?
It's warehouses have never been thought as of sexy, but they certainly are the sexy asset right now.
They are now.
We are the favored son, or my industry, the industrial industry is the favored son. Where we've never been in the spotlight like this. I think that trend is going to continue. It's going to take something big to disrupt this, something bigger than COVID, where it's going to disrupt everything, because it really what it boils down to is you have a lot of institutional investors coming into markets such as Dallas, LA, Chicago, New York, Houston, and that's the product they desire because of the credit of the tenants. So it's they see the warehouse as a bond payment for all the money they're trying to push out. So for now, I think, and that's going to continue to drive up rates and drive up per square foot cost for warehouse assets, where since of all the investors pounding this market, owner users who want to come in and buy a warehouse and have their business pay off their warehouse as a basically a retirement plan, it's becoming really difficult for them to find buildings because everything has been picked over. It's no different than the residential single family market in DFW, where if you go try to buy a house, you're one of 20 and you need to be an all cash offer and you got 3 days to close or 3 days to get under contract or go firm. But we're seeing a lot of parallels to that market where it is nearly impossible to find a user of a decent building to operate in, which is pushing people to lease, which again is driving up rates. So there's just too many factors that are contributing to this economy continuing to cook. It's going to take something really big to dismantle it. Something similar that happened in 08, 09, the Great Recession.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. I know from a digital perspective, when the e-commerce numbers spiked up, when COVID hit, the retail storefronts obviously they closed. They were just gone, and I just don't see any trend to reopen those things, and people want to get in their cars and start driving around instead of just clicking on their phone to get an order.
I would say retail has rebounded, but it's to the operators that are the most nimble. It's the mom and pop restaurant, that goods store that has something you can't, that boutique store that has something that you can't pick up online. So there are users that have rebounded and business owners that are really savvy, and the retail market is once healthy again. Yeah. But it's not back to 100% of what we saw in up to 15, 16, 17.
Well, it's changed.
It's changed. Exactly. It's changed. And you see there's that mall in Grand Prairie, and I'm blanking on the name, where it's now a final mile distribution center. So a lot of retail space is getting converted into industrial, where even though it's $15 a square foot, this distribution company sees that as worth it because it's no longer final mile, it's final quarter mile. It's how can I get my stuff immediately, and it's high price stuff. It's TVs, it's a high dollar or high margin product.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose that if a company has an opportunity to get space in a residential area or in an urban area, they're going to take it, right?
And the submarket and within DFW that you're seeing that is the design district, where historically that's buildings were valued at $20-$30 a square foot, and now they're $200 or $300 a square foot. So and these are 50s era buildings where it's 12-foot clear height, they're half showroom, and this submarket is really interesting because it's a blend. It's office, retail, industrial all at the same time, where you see high-end shoppers coming to these showrooms, but also you see institutional Fortune 50 companies buying warehouse space to get their goods to residents within a mile or a quarter mile. So it's the design district and Regal Row and Brook Hollow. That's the market that's really shifting and becoming a really urban industrial market, which DFW's never seen before. Because we have so much land, but that's changing. It's becoming more of an infill market, like we're nudged up against a mountain or a coast. A Denver, or Chicago, or LA, or New Jersey.
With those natural barriers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Our natural barrier is distance.
That's it.
Where's my stuff?
Just good flat land.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think for us, the future trends are probably focused around the continued manipulation of the data. So if more and more gets aggregated over time, it becomes how savvy can we come up with ways to learn from those things and make ourselves more efficient, or meet other types of customer demand, which could generate more revenue.
Right.
So for us, it's really about that proliferation of data and the ability to use it in meaningful ways.
Right.
So that's the exciting thing for us. And again, with companies creating more complexity of more warehouses, bigger warehouses, the infusion of technology in the warehouses, those are all creating opportunities for our clients to improve.
The price of warehousing space is going up, just like so many other things. People are asking themselves, how can they make the most out of the space they have? How can they make the last mile deliveries more efficient? Some are even turning to retail space as a storage solution in the middle of cities. In some cases, having these smaller warehouses in dense fulfillment locations is the right call. It all depends on what your data is saying. Then you have to interpret it and use it in the most meaningful way. The Forecast's next segment will give you the inside scoop on the necessity of automation. Stick around.
So what do we do, Rob, from a solution perspective? We see this complexity. What do we do? What are the different areas that we should be focused on?
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? I think in the world of international shipping and international supply chains, there's just an inherent complexity that's in most businesses now that just hasn't been there, in the past. So the engineering has to meet that level of complexity with its own mature solutions. And what I think for me, what it means is, the companies, all of the individual companies that are involved in your particular supply chain has to be able to communicate. And so there's this underlying foundation of a platform of some sort that can manage communication across companies in the supply chain. Now, in the past, I think we all know about EDI transmissions, and that's been kind of the rock that's been there for decades. The challenge, though, is that things have become so complex, and there's so many parties now that can be involved in your supply chain that the EDI concept has kind of run its course. And now you run into scenarios where the timeliness just isn't there. And so if you have a trucker that needs to go pick up a load at a customs depot at a port, and he's sitting in line because there's 50 other truckers trying to get to everything that came on that container ship, If you don't know that, that trucker's sitting there, or he just gives up and he doesn't pick up the load.
Right.
How do you get that information? What do you do? So there's a whole new level of maturity in systems that's required to support those use cases.
Thanks, as always, for tuning in for the forecast brought to you by Headstorm, with your hosts, John Humphrey and Rob Kelley. As a part of this vast community, we hope these tips and insights will make a difference, future-proof your business, your mindset, and help you surpass your expectations. Feel free to reach out. Our contact info is in the description. Hope to see you next time as the forecast brings you more thoughts from industry leaders and strategies to engineer growth.